So what are your criteria for good supervision? How long is your list of criteria? And how useful are your criteria really in your everyday supervision practice? My name is Oud Kastorp and this is Supervision Strategy. So last time we discussed supervisory risk appetite. This week we reflect on criteria for good supervision. In my experience, all supervision professionals use a set of quality criteria in their everyday practice. So you might say good supervision is thorough or objective. But we don't always deliberately choose these criteria. We kind of take them for granted. But I think it's worth critically reflecting on these criteria, because in fact they may determine to a large extent your success or failure as a supervisor. Of course, you might simply say, I'm doing well if I'm achieving my supervisory goals. And what your goals are and what my goals are may be quite different. But regardless of what your specific goals are, I would argue that there might be some criteria, maybe in some specific part of your practice or overall criteria, that we might all have in common. So let's first take a look at criteria for a specific part of your supervision practice. Criteria for good analysis. Now, implicitly or deliberately, you'll be applying some sort of criteria for analysis methodology. So you might expect that your colleagues check their work with peers. You might expect that they'll be focusing on the outcomes of the analysis. And you might expect that the relevant people have been heard. Now, of course, you also apply criteria to the analysis results. Right? So you expect them to be relevant, clear, and drafted in a way that enables you to take action based on its conclusions. And finally, you might also have some expectations on attitude or mindset. Right? So for instance, you may expect your colleagues to be objective, thorough, and open to criticism and revision. So that's already quite a long list, and the list could be a lot longer. Some people propose 100 quality criteria for good supervision. I mean, seriously. Now, a key point here is that the value of such a list of criteria depends on how you want to use it. If you want to systematically assess the quality of a supervision report, then an elaborate list of criteria could be quite useful. But if you want to refer to your core quality criteria in an inspirational speech, in your mission statement, or even just a regular meeting, then obviously such a long list doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, if you check the websites of supervision agencies, or you check the literature on this topic, there are plenty of different proposals for overall quality criteria for good supervision. Otto, for example, proposes 5 criteria: legality, independence, transparency, effectiveness, and responsibility. But even that is quite long, I think. If I look at my experience in supervision so far, I would argue that you could go a long way with just 2 criteria: effectiveness and legitimacy. Now, of course, there's a lot packed into those 2 concepts. Right? There's short-term and long-term effectiveness, and there are various forms of legitimacy. Right? But that's something for a future blog post. But in my experience, these 2 criteria do underlie a lot of what we aim for as supervision professionals. So if you want your quality criteria to actually be useful in achieving your goals, then I do think it's useful to reflect on these issues. So perhaps you might take a moment to ask yourself, or perhaps ask a colleague, the following questions. What are your criteria for good supervision? How long is your list of criteria? And how do you vary the length of that list depending on the context in which you use them? So, what are your thoughts on criteria for good supervision? Let us all know in the comment section, or let me know at supervisionstrategy.com. I'd love to hear from you. So next time we'll be talking about methods. We'll discuss 5 whys analysis. I will suggest a seemingly simple but really quite powerful method that supervisors can use to address the underlying causes of non-compliance rather than just addressing the symptoms. Until then, thank you for watching and thank you for working on supervision.